Hey everybody, it's Jonny Bowden. Today I want to answer the question, should you do intermittent fasting? Now I want to be clear from the beginning, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. There's a lot of different ways, I'll mention a few of them at the end. What I want to address is whether you should do it and what it actually accomplishes. Then if you're interested in actually doing it, I'll give you some good resources on the different ways to do it, and you can certainly devise your own system of doing it. But what I want to address now is what the purpose of it is and whether it's something you should consider doing. And the answer to that is yes, you should consider doing it. It's a very healthful practice and it accomplishes quite a lot. And let me explain how that works. A lot of people think of intermittent fasting as a diet, as something that will help you lose weight. It may. That's not really the purpose of intermittent fasting. The real purpose of intermittent fasting is metabolic improvement. And it does a lot of those things, and I'll tell you how it does them in just a minute. When they first started doing studies on intermittent fasting at Stanford, they were doing them on mice, and it wasn't really about weight loss. It was about improving different metabolic parameters, like your triglycerides or insulin, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. And it did all those things. It can be used for weight management, and it's very effective. And I'll tell you about that in a minute as well. But the primary thing that it does is to really improve metabolism in general. And I'll tell you how I think it does that. And to understand how it does that, you have to understand a hormone called insulin. And insulin is turning out to be at the heart of so many degenerative diseases that you don't want to get, from diabetes to obesity to heart disease to Alzheimer's. It is a huge factor. And insulin is a hormone that's secreted when your blood sugar goes up. And your blood sugar goes up almost every time you eat. There's some foods, some types of foods that don't raise it very much, but carbs always raise it, protein raises it to some degree. So you're always raising insulin when you eat. And insulin's primary job is to get sugar out of the bloodstream where it can do a lot of damage and get it into the muscle cells. But this system doesn't work very well for many, many people. It's been estimated that up to 75% of the country has some form of what we call insulin resistance, which means the cells just aren't listening to insulin. And this can really be the starting point of a lot of bad things, including heart disease. So we want to watch that. Now, my theory about why intermittent fasting is such a great deal is that what happens when you don't eat? The body doesn't secrete insulin. So you're actually giving that whole insulin system a rest, a much needed rest, because in our typical American diet, we're elevating insulin every single day. Every sugar-laden, starch-laden food that we eat, all the snacks that we eat, all that stuff raises insulin much too high and much too frequently. And that's when the system starts to break down. So intermittent fasting is actually kind of a recovery for a broken insulin system. And when you give it a rest like that, it stops flooding the body with this hormone, which is basically a fat storage hormone, and a hormone that's involved, as I said, in a lot of degenerative diseases. You want insulin to be in the zone. You do not want it to be elevated all the time. And when you take a break from food, you're giving the insulin system a much needed rest. And that may be one of the sources of all the metabolic improvements that we see with intermittent fasting. Another possibility is that you're giving your digestive system a rest. And think about that. You know, your digestive system's a little bit like your email inbox, you know. It gets crowded with so much stuff it can't get the work done. And when you're constantly feeding your body, it's always trying to keep up with the digestion, and a lot of us have gut issues and digestive issues. And so giving that a break so that it kind of deals with what it's got there, it's kind of stop taking new emails and I can answer the ones that I've already got there, is a very, very much needed rest for the system. As far as weight loss goes, people have found that one particular form of intermittent fasting, which is to keep your eating in a certain window, say 8 hours a day, is very effective. And I have known people, I'm not necessarily advocating this, people who have said, I can eat the same junky, crappy food all the time. As long as I eat it within a 6 or an 8 hour window, my weight stays the same. And that may well be true. I would like to give advice that isn't just about how to keep your weight off, but also how to keep your body healthy for decades. So I'd prefer that you don't eat a junk food diet within a short window. But if you do eat anything within a short window, it has some beneficial effects, and it may be very helpful for weight loss, or for weight maintenance. If all of this sounds like something you might want to try, here's where you go to find out the different ways. I'm going to give you a very fast overview of it, but there's a lot of detailed information on the internet, and it's good information. I'll tell you where to get it. But some of the ways people do this is what I just mentioned, keeping your eating within an 8-hour window, or even a 6-hour window if you can do it. Now, it sounds easy, but it has some challenges. So, for example, maybe you don't eat till noon, and then you finish everything that you're going to eat before 8 o'clock. That would be one way to do intermittent fasting. You'd then be fasting from 8 at night until 12 the next day. It's a nice little fast. Another way to do it is what they call alternate day fasting. Not an easy thing to do. Every other day you don't eat. On the days you don't eat, it can be tough. There are variations on that, in which you eat maybe 700-800 calories on the days that you're fasting. Just enough so that you don't, get blood sugar drops and mood changes and irritability and all the other stuff that comes with that. There is the 5-2 way, 5 days eating normally, 2 days off. Also has a lot of challenges because there's a couple days you don't eat. I'm more of a fan of the extended window, sort of like maybe not eating from 9 o'clock on till noon the next day. That's a very effective way to get an intermittent fasting window. But like I said, the ways to do it, the methodology for doing it is available. Here are some of the best sources. Probably if you want to get a book and you want to get absolutely state-of-the-art information on it, it's called The Complete Book of Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G, that you can take to the bank. He is the king of intermittent fasting. Any articles you find by him, any podcasts you find where he's either been interviewed or is the interviewer, that is the Bible when it comes to intermittent fasting. There's also Dr. David Perlmutter has some good material on intermittent fasting. There's a version of it that my friend Dave Askley from Bulletproof does called the Bulletproof Intermittent Fast, which is a little bit different. So there's different variations. And again, like I said, this isn't about how to do it, it's about whether to do it. And in my opinion, intermittent fasting is not a fad. It's actually, when you think about it, much closer to the way our paleo ancestors actually ate, because they wandered around. They, were able to hunt an animal, and they would feed, very nicely on that animal for a day or so, and they wouldn't have any food for the next day. So they were constantly in a state of eating, fasting, eating, fasting. It was kind of what our genes were adapted to. So in many ways, it's kind of a return to that kind of paleo existence, and that's always been a good thing. So I think intermittent fasting is not a fad. It's been well researched. It has strong metabolic effects, all of which are positive. It may help you maintain weight, increase energy. It does a lot of good stuff. And if you're interested based on what I've said and you want to try it, I just gave you some really good sources for where to find out the nuts and bolts of how to do it. This is Jonny Bowden. Hope you liked this. If you did, please push the like button and subscribe to the channel, and keep the questions coming, and I'll see you next time.